Andrew J. Thomas here again, and today I'm talking about traditional versus self-publishing. And as I mentioned before, there are really three main differences between the two, or at least that's been my experience so far. And they are in terms of cost per unit sold, in terms of the amount of money that you make back for each book, the amount of control that you have over the whole process, and also the time scale over which it all takes place. There probably aren't, fair. What am I trying to say? There isn't either one that is better or worse than the other. It's really up to you as to what you want. With traditional publishing, your first step would be to find a literary agent, and I would recommend that you use the Writers and Artists website or book to source one of those. When you approach one, you need to give quite a lot of targeted information so that you're making sure that you're addressing the right person. So it's not a case of picking a particular agency, it's more a case of actually finding the specific agent within that agency who your book is going to most resonate with. And Writers and Artists is useful for that, but also I found just frankly googling people's names was helpful too. Excuse me. Sorry. The thing though is, as I mentioned just now, timescale, because most literary agents will say they're going to take sort of 8 to 12 weeks to get back to you, and that's just to say whether they would like to read any more or not, because at that point all you'll have sent them is typically a synopsis and something like the first 10,000 words. So you'll wait 2 to 3 months basically to hear back, yes I want to read some more, no I don't. And even if they do, their next role is going to be to try and find a publisher which they feel will consider your book to be saleable, because at the end of the day, we might all of us like to think that it's all about the art, but ultimately it's a business. And therefore, the time combined between the literary agent initially reading your book and or choosing whether to read it or not, then reading it, then sourcing a publisher, that can be quite protracted. And the publishers, of course, have got their own schedules too. So you know, you're looking 6 to 12 months potentially to get something out there from the point that you're actually ready to basically to go to print in your mind. The difference between that, of course, and self-publishing is that when you've reached that point of I'm now ready to pull the trigger, then you are days away from having your book available to be sold through the self-publishing route. So that's what I mean in terms of the difference of timescales. It's really very dramatic. Sorry about this morning. And as I mentioned yesterday, self-publishing, it's not about doing it all yourself. The name is a bit of an oxymoron, really, insofar as it's about surrounding yourself with experts. Although, of course, the first thing you need to do is to get it ready. And a lot of that is largely up to you. So things like spelling, grammar, layout, they're pretty much a given. And there are some software packages that can help with that. You can even get people who can do some of that work for you and so on. Depends what your budget is, of course. And I would certainly recommend it, something I did at the suggestion of another author. Have friends read the book in its earliest drafts. And then all importantly, as far as my journey was concerned, get a professional editor. Because my book just changed out of all recognition once he got his hands on it. To give you an indication, when I was writing the book, I wrote it in 3 sections. I didn't set out to write it in 3 sections. It's just that when I got to the end of chapter 8, it kind of felt like a few story threads were coming together. And I went back, did a lot of personal editing, and then to start on chapter 9 was quite hard. Same thing happened at the end of chapter 16. I blame it on the fact that I watched too many movies, which are typically in 3 acts. And that was therefore just how my brain was working. Thing was, once the professional editor got his hands on it though, it had had quite a slow build-up into the story, and he advised, rightly I believe now, that many modern readers, particularly younger readers, like stories that really hit them in the face much more from the beginning. And therefore, I was moving things from chapter 10, 12, 15, back to the very beginning. And I ended up with, rather than 24 chapters, with 17 chapters, and the whole sequence of events changed completely as well. So I know from my own experience that when we've first written our book, and we've even shared it with friends, most of whom are probably going to be quite generous in their compliments, to have a professional editor look at it, it's kind of scary. It certainly was for me. And when you get that first feedback, which as you start to mull it over and so on, seems to be suggesting a fairly root and branch change, then that's pretty scary. But it was worth it for me. So I would highly recommend you get a professional editor, and you can use editors at different stages of the process. One of the challenges that I found was how to find an editor. It's not that they aren't out there. In fact, there's too many of them. If you start Googling book editors, you'll get loads of hits. The problem I found, or the question that came up in my mind, was really, well, who can I trust? Who are these people? Are they just, I don't know, have they got any qualifications? Have they edited any really good books, any sort of professionally available books and so on? Or are they just people who feel as if they might do it in their spare time? So I went back to the Writers and Artists Yearbook, or specifically their website, because you can join and get access to other resources online. And I found my editor through them. But there are many routes to finding the person who's going to work best for you. And that is important in itself, because obviously you want somebody whose thinking, whose taste potentially is going to gel with your own, and therefore will be viewing your book from a position of sympathy and understanding, rather than perhaps an opposite perspective, which could be quite destructive ultimately, not through any fault of theirs or yours, just a mismatch. So so when you've gone through all that and you've done all your work and so on, that'll fall out of it being edited, because there will be work you need to do on the back of their work. It's not like they change it for you, they just make suggestions. At some point you'll find, and I found that reading through the book to myself out loud was useful at this final stage. And at some point I just got royally fed up with the whole thing. Not with the process so much as just the story itself. It's like, oh, I've read this so many times now. And other people have said to me, when you get there, that's the time to actually finish. And it kind of worked. I certainly couldn't have gone on much longer. At which point the question then became for me, well, do I go full out with Amazon, or do I go with somebody like Ingram Spark? Now, I went to the London Book Fair in 2018 and met a number of published authors there, all of whom recommended Ingram Spark. So that was initially my thought as to the direction to go in. Thing is, though, once I then actually had published the book, in fact, onto Amazon, but with Ingram Spark effectively as the printer of the book, I realised that by adding that third party, I was creating a time lag in the order fulfilment to the customers, which I didn't want. So in the end, what I've done is I've gone with both. Now, one good reason to go with Ingram Spark is that they do hardback books, whereas Amazon's KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, do not do hardbacks. They just do paperbacks and ebooks. Another good reason to go with Ingram Spark is that they have massive global reach. So, for example, my book is for sale in Barnes & Noble in the US, and I'm in the UK, as you can possibly tell from the architecture behind me. And Amazon, of course, is kind of everywhere, but it's not high street everywhere. And there are some people who would always buy from Barnes & Noble, in the same way that in the UK some people might always buy from Waterstones. So I would want my book available in both those places, and it is, courtesy of Ingram Spark. So the route that I've gone down ultimately is that any outlets that are not Amazon, the hardback and the paperback are provided. Really sorry about this. Have a quick slug of coffee. There we go, very professional. Any outlets, like high street outlets, like non-Amazon online outlets, anything of that sort, they're all fulfilled via Ingram Spark, both in terms of the hardback and the paperback. Also, Ingram Spark produces ebooks, therefore for Apple Books, for Kobo, and for Nook, my ebook is fulfilled through Ingram Spark. With Amazon, though, it's a slightly different picture, because for the Kindle ebook and for the paperback sold via Amazon, I'm having those produced by Amazon KDP. The hardback produced by Ingram Spark, though, is also available through Amazon. And when you go onto Amazon and you look for Entanglement Andrew J. Thomas, you'll find that they're all on the same page, the hardback, the paperback, the ebook. So there's a complete seamlessness to the customer-facing end of the whole thing. But as I say, the actual fulfillment differs quite a lot in the background. Why didn't I go 100% Amazon? Well, I wanted my book to be available on things like Apple Books for a start, and therefore I needed a third party to be doing the ebook for the non-Kindle part of the equation. I also didn't want to go down the Kindle Unlimited route. Now, Kindle Unlimited, if you're not familiar with it, is a process whereby you sign up to that, and your ebook is at that point no longer available for any other platforms at all. So not Apple, not Nook, not Kobo, none of them. It's just Kindle. But you get paid per page that people read on their Kindles, and Kindle Unlimited subscribers get free access to all Kindle Unlimited books. So consequently, there are many people out there who see that kind of breadth of reach into the Amazon customer base as being a good thing. I'm personally a bit of an Apple user, so I wanted my book on Apple Books. How many I've sold at this point in time, I simply don't know, but it was more of a personal preference. So I chose, as I say, to go down this hybrid route between Amazon and Ingram Spark, being the dual providers depending on the outlet that people were actually using. Now, that's gone through quite a bit of the stuff at a high level in terms of making the choice between traditional and self-publishing, and also some of the routes to self-publishing itself. Now, there's a few things in there that I've glossed over, which I'm going to come back to on future videos, because I want to keep each of these videos quite short. One of which is around some of the software that I mentioned that you can use to help get your text into a reasonable state. And another one is about accessing some of the additional experts that you might want access to, such as the cover designers, the editors, people of that sort. And then another is also about just the physical process of going through self-publishing. So in terms of something somebody asked me once was, well, what format do you actually submit it to Ingram Spark in? Is it PDF or what is it? And although the answer is PDF to both Ingram Spark and Amazon, I discovered there are different types of PDF, and they differ as to the requirements of Amazon and Ingram Spark. So these are all tiny little details which can trip you up along the way, which I'll come back to in a future video. And as I said yesterday, I hope you're enjoying these, and I will see you again soon. Thanks a lot. Bye for now.